Hi, I'm Sarah, and in this video I'm going to explain how and why I redefined the application of external torque to human movement. Before we begin, a little background. I have spent the past 4 years trying to improve my movement patterns. As you can see from these photos, I had quite a lot of painful imbalances. My journey started with StrongFit in early 2017. I had the amazing opportunity to travel around the world learning from Rich and Julian, and this experience completely changed my life. I became one of their first certified StrongFit coaches in 2018. There were 4 things that Rich and Julian said to me that really stuck with me, and I decided to pursue these 4 things in greater detail in 2019 and 2020. Let's take a look at these. 1. Julian said it all starts at the main arch being your core. 2. Richard told me you can't fix somebody else until you first figure out how to fix yourself. Of course, the caveat to that, nobody else can fix you except for you. We can give you the tools, but it's up to you to implement them consistently over time. 3. Julian said, learn from your mistakes. Reinforcement learning. 4. Julian said to see if the principles apply to the fringes. Guess what I discovered? 1. It does all start at the main arch. More specifically, the TVA, the transverse abs. This is your body's primary stabilizer. Primary because it acts first. So whenever you move, it acts first. If it doesn't act first, you will develop painful compensation patterns. 2. You can't fix someone else until you figure out how to fix yourself first. I agree with Richard on this one. I am grateful that I had every imbalance under the sun. It turns out that my biggest problems ended up becoming my greatest source of power. 3. Mistakes are a great way to learn what works and what doesn't work. You know, I always tell my Strength Academy members, it doesn't matter what action you take. All that matters is that you take action, even if it's the wrong action, because it will eventually lead you to the correct action. 4. I did what Julian said by thrusting myself into the fringes by trying to learn extreme movements at 43 years of age. I discovered a lot of interesting things in the fringes, and that's why I'm making this video, to share my discoveries with you. I am fascinated by human movement. And I learned through self-experimentation by trying to learn how to get better control of my body in space in a variety of challenging positions and extreme ranges of motion. When I first started my journey in 2017, I couldn't even bend over and touch my toes. In fact, Richard had to hold on to me so I wouldn't fall over and knock my teeth out. So as you can see, I've clearly figured out some things along the way. The concept of torque is a foundation of human movement, and one of the most famously brilliant concepts taught in StrongFit. You've probably even heard me mention terms such as internal torque and external torque in other videos. You've probably seen this famous poster, the yellow and red poster, where the red muscles are external torque muscles and the yellow muscles are internal torque muscles. I agree with this poster. I got this from a spineless individual. Here's the sacrum. These are the lumbar vertebrae. These are the thoracic vertebrae. I remember like it was yesterday. It was the summer of 2017 in Minnesota in Tyler Ryder's gym, and Julian wrote this on the whiteboard. In internal torque, you use the external obliques. So let's imagine my hand is the external obliques at the main arch. And this fixes the lumbar spine, and it allows the thoracic spine to flex and extend. In external torque, you use the lumbar erectors and the forepack and the internal obliques at the main arch. And this fixes the thoracic spine, and it allows the lumbar spine to flex and extend. I consistently applied these principles to exercise, and I started to have questions about the way external torque ET is being applied to exercise. Let me explain. So whenever I would do ET exercises, such as ET pull-ups, sumo deadlifts, Anderson squats, and sandbag tosses, I would have horrible low back pain. My hips and my thoracic spine also became very jacked up and tight. I couldn't help but notice that the only time I wasn't in pain was when I was doing IT exercises. So I decided to stop doing all ET exercises and revisit the basics. The basics being, 1, it all starts at the main arch. 2, learn from your mistakes. If I was having pain every time I was doing ET exercises, then that's a sign I needed to stop doing the ET exercises and learn something else first. So that's what I set out to do. I started experimenting on myself with all kinds of movements, especially really challenging ones, because that would force me to learn. And here are my conclusions. The reason why my pain went away, why my mobility increased, the reason why I relaunched my Strength Academy in 2020. Are you ready? I previously mentioned that the TVA is the body's primary stabilizer, TVA, transverse abs. Think of it as a power ring. It wraps around to the back, but not all the way. What finishes the ring is the QL. So think of the TVA as a weight belt. The TVA represents 90%, so the remaining 10% in the back, the QL, that represents the 10%. Since most of us have no TVA strength because we sit all the time and most training programs don't actually target the TVA, and most people don't even know what the TVA is. So that means we aren't tapping into that 90%. Instead, we rely on using the 10%. Instead, we are using the 10%. The TVA is the power ring that represents 90%. It stabilizes the lumbar spine when you move. It acts first. You never want to move without the TVA engaged. Having the TVA engaged allows your thoracic spine to flex and extend. Having the TVA engaged is the definition of flow, the definition of internal torque. Movement that is incredibly beautiful to watch is TVA inspired. If you've ever watched me move, you can see it's effortless, it's beautiful. You can see my TVA is engaged, doing its thing, and you can see how this allows my thoracic spine to flex and extend. So here is my opinion, the moment we've been waiting for in this video. All safe human movement is internal torque at the main arch. External torque at the main arch is a compensation pattern, and a painful one at that. Here's an example that you'll probably relate to that will help you understand this concept. Have you ever done a really heavy sandbag carry and at about 300 meters in, your low back starts to blow up in a very painful, unpleasant way? Well, now you know why. It's because your TVA gave out, so now you have to stabilize with the 10% part of the power ring, the quadratus lumborum, and the lumbar erectors, and these muscles were not designed to do that job. They're being overworked, and it's very uncomfortable for them. They get painfully tight, and they hurt. The only reason why I am able to do a body weight sandbag carry for 400 meters without dropping the sandbag, it's 130 pounds, that's my body weight, it's because I can keep my TVA engaged the entire time. And I also honed the skill of keeping my mind calm in a flow state. And this is what helps me deal with the bear in this situation, the 130-pound sandbag, which becomes quite a nasty bear around 300 meters, if you know what I'm talking about. And you'll notice that when I do the carry, it's beautifully calm. You can see that my movement patterns are very flowy and beautiful, and that's because my TVA is engaged the entire time. I don't even need to yell or scream. I don't switch to external torque mentally. This is a flow state. So in order to last longer in this situation with an escalating bear, that means you need to balance the arch. So that means you need to keep your TVA engaged the whole time, and you need to stay calm in here. I like to ask myself, hey, girlfriend, is your TVA still engaged? Yes, it is. Well, then suck it up and keep walking and stay calm. And that's what allows me to go the full 400 meters. I want to address this question now because it's something I get asked all the time. Do I drop the sandbag if my low back starts to blow up and hurt? If my TVA gives out and I can't recover the TVA engagement, then I will drop the bag because I don't want to strengthen a deleterious compensation pattern. And remember what I said before. If you are having a hard time with something, it's usually a sign that you need to learn something else first. So if your back keeps blowing up in a sandbag carry, that's a sign that you need to learn exercises to strengthen the daylights out of your TVA. When you don't use your TVA at the main arch to stabilize your lumbar spine, this means that your secondary stabilizers will have to do all of the work of the primary stabilizer. This is what causes the hip flexors, the surrounding hip musculature, and the low back to become jacked up and tight. So if you have low back pain and tight hips, now you know why. In my Strength Academy, I teach people how to savagely strengthen their TVA. This is what has helped me overcome QL pain, tight hips, tight shoulders, and a tight thoracic spine. I have now seen this work on hundreds of people since I relaunched my academy. We all have grown 1/4 of an inch to 1/3 of an inch taller just by learning how to stop using the secondary stabilizers as the primary stabilizer. My conclusion is that all safe human movement is IT at the main arch. ET at the main arch is a painful compensation pattern. So does this mean that the classic strong fit ET exercises are bad? That depends. A wise man once said it's not what you do, but rather how you do it. Let's take a look at this in detail. The sandbag toss. This is a classic ET strong fit exercise. So when I did this back in the day with external torque at the main arch, I was dumping everything into my lumbar spine, which is not designed to extend like that. You will also notice that I had very poor hip flexor opening. My hip mobility was non-existent, so I couldn't fully extend at the hips. And you can see the T-spine extension is non-existent, and so that really made the overhead shoulder mobility non-existent. So yeah, everything was dumping into my lumbar spine, my poor lumbar spine, and it paid the price. So to make it really clear, when you do this exercise with ET at the main arch, you are locking your thoracic spine, which is the very part of the spine that we need to do this exercise. We need it to extend. So let's take a look at how I do sandbag tosses today. I do them with internal torque at the main arch. My TVA is engaged. It's stabilizing my lumbar spine. And even though my lumbar spine is slightly arched, it's still stabilized in this arched position. Listen up, I can engage my TVA in any position. Just saying. So as you can see, with the TVA engaged, my hip flexors are no longer in perpetual oh shit mode. So they can open up and you can see beautiful hip extension. You can also see beautiful thoracic spine extension because I've locked my lumbar spine, so now the T-spine can extend, which is what we need for this exercise. And because I have developed my thoracic spine extension, my overhead mobility, my overhead shoulder flexion is so much better. I mean, what an improvement. Let me just tell you that having a T-spine that can extend is the best thing that happened to me in 2020. I now move pain-free. I no longer dump into my low back. I'm also a much better athlete as a result. And if you follow my stories on Instagram, which you should do, follow them, you have seen for yourself the dramatic improvement this past year. Let's look at another example. The classic ET strong fit pull-up. So I was taught to do these by engaging the 4-pack and using the lumbar erectors at the main arch. Let's take a look here. you can already see the compensation pattern, especially in the left low back region. You can see the muscles compensating. They are popping out right at you. These were very painful for me to execute. I mean, if you think about it, ET at the main arch is a stupid idea because it won't allow your thoracic spine to extend, which is what you need to do a pull-up like this. So yeah, you're going to dump everything into your low back, and it's going to set off a bad chain of reactions upstream and downstream with your secondary stabilizers. So they're all going to get jacked up too. Now look at how I do them today in internal torque at the main arch. Even though my lumbar spine is slightly arched, I have locked it in place using my TVA. I told you it doesn't matter what position you are in as long as you lock the TVA. And we'll get to more examples to illustrate that in a moment. Since my lumbar spine is locked, you see no activity happening at the lumbar area. You don't see any of those muscles popping out pissed off anymore. Now what you see is the T-spine extending beautifully. These feel so good. They're now effortless. My elbow isn't annoyed anymore. It's changed my game. The wheel, or the back bridge. This is a beautiful example illustrating that it doesn't matter what position your spine is in. All that matters is that the TVA is stabilizing the lumbar spine at the main arch. So back in the day, when I had no TVA strength at all, and I was applying ET at the main arch to my bridges, it would be very painful in the low back. I was dumping everything in the low back, and I was relying on the lumbar extension to make this happen. And the lumbar spine isn't designed to extend like that. You can see I had no thoracic spine extension. The whole thoracic spine was locked down, and I had no hip flexor opening. And that's because I was trying to stabilize my main arch with secondary stabilizers such as the hip flexors. So now let's take a look at how I do wheels today. So I stabilize at the main arch with my TVA. Because of that, my hips are mobile. So you can see I have beautiful hip flexor opening, which is what we need to achieve this position. What we also need to achieve this position is beautiful thoracic spine extension, brought to us by a strong TVA stabilizing the lumbar spine. And this is what has allowed me to gradually improve my overhead mobility over time. I think that the wheel is an extremely underrated exercise that people should be doing. This is how you prevent back pain. It teaches you how to learn how to move without dumping into your low back. It forces you to fix your deleterious movement patterns and learn how to use your body properly. The final conclusions. And if you've made it this far in the video, thank you for watching. Let me know, hit the like button, drop me a comment. So, I believe that the classic strong fit ET exercises should be performed in IT at the main arch. This opens up the possibility to extend at the T-spine, which will change your quality of life. As long as you are in IT at the main arch, stabilizing with your TVA, it doesn't matter what position your body is in. It doesn't matter what movements you're doing. It doesn't matter if you're applying external torque or internal torque at the shoulders or hips. And it doesn't matter if your lumbar spine is locked in place in a slightly extended position. All that matters is that you're engaging your TVA at the main arch. Therefore, all safe movement is TVA inspired. That means IT at the main arch. The TVA acts first. That means that all classic strong fit ET exercises need to be performed in IT at the main arch. So are ET exercises actually IT exercises? Has the fringe become the new center? Let me know what you think. Drop me a comment below.